Everybody, our top stories. President Trump says the Singapore summit is on after hosting North Korea's top diplomat at the White House today. President Trump says real progress is being made, but the president cautions everyone that June 12th Singapore summit could be only the first of what will be many meetings to be held between the two leaders.
They want it. We think it's important. And I think we would be making a big mistake if we didn't have it. I think we're going to have a relationship, and it'll start on June 12th.
We'll take up the president's efforts to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula and to bring North Korea into the global community of nations. Dr. Sebastian Gorka among our guests here tonight. Also tonight, how about that Trump economy? Just keeps getting stronger and stronger. The latest job numbers show unemployment at an 18-year low. And that has Dems and rhinos running scared 5 months ahead of the midterm elections. And those establishment rhinos, Ryan and McConnell, are sweating profusely, wringing their hands. They're near tears that President Trump just keeps winning and winning. We take up the political implications with the dean himself, Ed Rollins, and the national left-wing media brimming with hacks and activists and mediocrities, the mundane and the inane working tirelessly to support the profane. Foul-mouthed Samantha Bee holding on to her job, while Roseanne Barr is ousted by big entertainment. Diamond and Silk here to talk about the efforts of Hollywood, the national left-wing media, and corporate America to silence conservatives. Our top story tonight, President Trump says the June 12th Singapore summit with Kim Jong-un is back on. President Trump made the announcement after his historic meeting with President Kim's envoy, Kim Yong-chol, at the White House. Fox News White House correspondent Kevin Corke with our report.
Lou, good evening. I think it's probably going to be a very successful meeting. That's what we heard from President Trump at the conclusion of today's meeting with North Korean officials. He also told us to pack our bags. The trip is on, the meeting is on, the summit is on for June 12th in Singapore. Now, no surprise here, this was a rare gathering at the White House between leaders from Washington and Pyongyang. In fact, first time in nearly 2 decades, a top official from the Hermit Kingdom has actually come here. And now what began as an expected delivery of a letter from Kim Jong-un and perhaps a brief visit morphed into this 80-minute discussion of a wide range of topics from denuclearization to security to sanctions and a whole lot more. Now, the president, as you can well imagine, was asked about a number of different things, like might he do something about sanctions? What about the so-called maximum pressure campaign? The president said a lot, but most notably, he warned everybody to tamp down expectations because this is only a first step.
We're going to be June 12th. We'll be in Singapore. It'll be a beginning. I don't say, and I've never said it happens in one meeting. You're talking about years of hostility, years of problems, years of really hatred between so many different nations. But I think you're going to have a very positive result.
Now, it is also fair to point out, Lou, that the U.S. has to be sober about this pending summit with the North Koreans. After all, we have seen them say all the right things previously. In fact, they've made a number of promises previously, only to break them, each and every one. In fact, I don't have to go very far back in history. I can take you back to some pictures we have from October of 2000. You remember that big meeting that the North Koreans had with then President Bill Clinton? Well, unfortunately for them, for us, and for the entire world, you see where that got us. Nowhere, because the North Koreans reneged on the deal, so say folks here at the White House. Now, as you can also imagine, we are eager to get a readout of that letter that the president talked about receiving from the North Koreans. As soon as I get one, I promise you I will pass it along. But for now, back to you, Lou.
Kevin, we await your update. Thanks so much. Kevin Corke from the White House. Joining me now to take up the declaration today by the president that there will be a
things in Vienna and Geneva would have taken a year or a year and a half to get back on track.
It would have taken 2 weeks, Seb. It would have taken 2 weeks just for Kerry to get his bicycles to Singapore.
Right. And the president announces the cancellation. It's a tough letter, but he leaves that window open and he says, look, this is important for all of us. So if you want to send me a letter, write me a letter. and within a couple of days, that letter is hand-delivered to the Oval Office, and the president walks out and says, let's do this. I mean, we've never seen this before in diplomacy. It's stunning.
And of course, percolating along the way is the foundation work of a lot of career diplomats working to get this on exactly the right footing and see that the conditions that the president has laid out are met every step of the way preceding that summit. The president, while being very cautious, seems also very assured that the North Koreans are meeting the markers, at least to this point.
Well, look, I have to say he's got the right man heading the State Department. To have somebody who was running and reforming the CIA for over a year, who made these connections to the highest levels of that regime, then transform over to the State Department to become the chief negotiator. He knows where the problems are. He knows about weapons regimes, inspection regimes.
But I think, Seb, you would agree, there is no one within this administration who knows more about the State Department, about our history in international relations and with the North Koreans and every other country in the world than John Bolton, the national security advisor. And I think it's interesting, we haven't seen hide nor hair of Ambassador Bolton. He is working obviously in the trenches and laying the groundwork and doing everything he can to assure this president's success.
He and his brand new chief of staff, Fred Fleitz, they know exactly the games North Korea's played for the last 30 years. They know exactly what to look for. I'm sure they're working hand in glove with Mike Pompeo and his new team. And rest assured, if this summit actually happens, Lou, it will be a very serious regime they put in place.
Yeah, you know, it's an exciting prospect, obviously, for the world, as the president has said. It should be an exciting prospect for Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans. We also know that, like the scorpion and the tortoise, nature is a very strong element to overcome. Now we'll see whether or not this president will determine whether or not that scorpion can overcome its nature. Sebastian Gorka, as always, good to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou. My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Up next, today's jobs numbers so good, the Dems can't stand it. Ed Rollins on the midterms, the numbers, the Trump economy, and oh yes, the Dems, the deep state, and the left, they are just apoplectic. This man keeps winning. See that fella? He said he would win, and win. Are you tired yet? No, nobody is. Ed Rollins, here next. Stay with us. Well, this Trump economy is, well, it's Trumpian. Unemployment now at an 18-year low, 3.8%. But Nancy Pelosi says, get ready, more jobs, quote, don't matter to families hit with, quote, soaring new costs, whatever that means. Her amazingly inane comment coming from the same out-of-touch Democratic leader who called the Trump tax cuts crumbs. Joining us tonight, the Dean himself, Ed Rollins, chairman of the Great America PAC, Hall of Fame political consultant, political director of the Reagan White House. Good to see you, my friend.
Well, I thought it was most appropriate for the former speaker to say that lowest unemployment numbers in 18 years and the lowest ever for African Americans
and Hispanics
was irrelevant because we need to get those unemployment numbers back up again, and we got to get high taxes back up there again. And every Republican ought to tie their Democratic opponent right around her and say, "This is what she said. Either you stand by her, or you denounce her right today."
Well, you mean the ones who aren't running as rhinos, because the rhinos are going to be right there echoing everything that Nancy Pelosi says, because they're as interested in dependency as she is.
Well, our former speaker, John Boehner, was popping off today with a Bloody Mary sitting by his side.
That's, by the way, that's Andrew Cuomo. I don't think he had a Bloody Mary, but we can't be assured of that. But that was Nancy Pelosi. Coming up with her vanities.
Boehner was complaining about the Republican Party. Now there's no Republican Party. It's now Trump's party. Well, it is Trump's party. And Boehner and those guys ought to understand that. And he basically
Boehner wants it to be Tom Donahue's party.
Well,
he wants it to be owned by the Chamber of Commerce, Wall Street, the Koch brothers, and the Business Roundtable, like it was when he was paid off to suck up their nonsense.
He got to drink fancy wine every day and lived a good life. So whatever.
But apparently Paul Ryan wants to get free of all of that burden.
The quicker the better.
By the way, Paul Ryan, you should know, I mean, just yesterday declaring he just doesn't agree with this Trump tariff business, you know, the one where President Trump is the only force working to balance trading relationships around the globe. It is what the International Monetary Fund should be talking about and working toward, the World Bank and every world leader. Instead, only Donald Trump has the guts and the vision to be working toward that balancing of international relations and trade.
There's no reason. You've asked me several times how we'll do in the midterms. There's no reason we shouldn't do we should do very well now with this low unemployment rate, with job costs going up in the sense of people's wages. Trump really is what people ought to be talking about.
Yeah, by the way, the people should be talking about are those Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and every one of those Republicans running for re-election.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, having run Reagan's campaign in his first midterm, unemployment reached almost 11% at the same election period, and we got clobbered. We have this low unemployment rate, and it'll go down even further as the tax bill continues to work and work well. Biggest month ever in revenue this last April. So my sense is it's nothing but a positive.
Now, this isn't Nancy Pelosi with a Bloody Mary, but it will make you happy because it is your pal, John Boehner. Have we got that picture? Let's take a look at that. He's holding. Look at that. He's holding forth.
And that's deadly.
He doesn't have a cigarette. What's going on?
Well, he's probably in a private, he's in a public building there. I'm sure there's probably a law in Florida. I think it says Daytona, something like that.
That's what former speakers. Can you see?
Sit there drinking Bloody Marys.
And Paul Ryan was his personal choice to replace him.
And equally as important, condemning Trump all day. That was what the speech was about. Now Trump's party said it's not a Republican party anymore. It's now Trump's party.
I got to ask you. I mean, the president just announcing that Kim Jong-un and he will be meeting in Singapore as things stand right now on 12th. I mean, that's basically 11 days away. And I mean, people are scattering and heaving to meet all of that pressure that is going to be on them for the first 12 days and then on the president and Kim Jong-un.
But I will say this, the president having canceled it and now having been briefed and everything else, he will be far better prepared, and they will be far better prepared in the sense that they know what Trump wants now, which is a good thing.
You sound like one of those guys that he has replaced. You know, this man came into this office and people were talking about him being presidential. And that has echoes. That has a faint echo of that. Honestly, Ed, this president, if he hasn't showed people that he's prepared,
you always misinterpret my words. I'm saying it's a positive thing for the president having canceled it. The North Koreans now understand.
But it's a negative thing to say that he wasn't prepared, because that's what you're saying.
No, I'm saying I said they're prepared now for his positions that he's going to take.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
I did misunderstand.
You always misinterpret me because you cut me off before I get to finish my thought.
My fault.
I'm an old man. I'm an old man. It takes me a little longer to get it out. Two old guys. I mumble and you can't hear. So that's.
Well, you know, we sound a little bit like the odd couple, and
we are the odd couple.
We are a bit odd,
but we've been around for a long time and agree with most stuff.
You got it, partner.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks
Happy
so
weekend.
much. Ed Rollins, the dean himself, and still giving instruction. And yes, I'm still there. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you think the Dems, the deep state, and the left are trembling now at the prospect President Trump is already writ large in American history books through his unprecedented successes in both domestic and foreign policy? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. And if you will, please follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs, like me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. And up next, even rhinos are calling for Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein to recuse himself. We take it up with Tammy Bruce and Byron York right after these messages. We'll be right back. Rhino Senator Lindsey Graham jumping on the Rod Rosenstein recusal bandwagon. In a letter obtained by Fox News, the South Carolina Republican, or Rhino, asked Rosenstein to recuse if he considers himself to be a potential witness in the Russia investigation. But Graham is no ally of President Trump's when it comes to the Mueller witch hunt. In the past few days, he's accused the Trump administration of having a, quote, blind spot on Russia. I mean, who is this guy? He said firing Mueller would be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. Then he introduced a legislation to protect Robert Mueller from being fired, which is the end of any tenuous hold that Senator Graham had on the constitutional republic that we live in. Obama's Attorney General, Eric Holder, speaking of people with a tenuous grip, saying President Trump's pardons are a plot against the Russian investigation. Oh, man. Holder says his pet parrot, Robert Mueller, or just gift as it was been styled, to justice, will not be thwarted by pardons like the one President Trump yesterday gave to conservative activist Dinesh D'Souza. Holder was deputy AG when Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, a corrupt multi-zillionaire convicted of tax evasion who fled to Switzerland, but who, well, President Clinton was very nice and brought him home, safe and warm. We don't know the exact price tag for that. Joining us tonight, Washington Examiner chief political correspondent Byron York, Tammy Bruce, radio talk show host, columnist at the Washington Times, both Fox Business contributors. Rosenstein recusal. Senator Graham asked it so nicely. Do you think you ought to recuse yourself? He declares Trump to be acting. I mean, the man is a little bewildering, to say the least.
It's obviously a politician's move. He's doing things that kind of please everyone, trying to, I think, in some ways, artificially establish his own independence in a way. But as a result, I think it to some degree has more impact when you've got a guy who has the background he has, suggesting to Rosenstein that because of his role within this framework, that maybe he should step away. And so that's a very good question, especially.
Lou, one thing about this Rosenstein, this is something that people who've been observing this case have been talking about for a long time, which is this. If the firing of James Comey is a big thing, if it's Exhibit A in a case of alleged obstruction of justice against the president, how can Rod Rosenstein supervise that investigation? He was up to his neck in the firing of James Comey. He was part of it, wrote a memo justifying it. So the question is, how could he stay in control of the Mueller investigation if that's a big thing?
And how could he be the one to select Robert Mueller if they had a personal and professional relationship that went back 20 years? I mean, the man is conflicted on so many levels. Tammy, I mean, and everyone is walking around Washington, D.C. Only in Washington could this happen, pretending that they're unaware of all of these conflicts day by day that exist between Rosenstein, the special counsel, the president, and the attorney general, who, by the way, is, I mean, he is purer than Cassandra and absolutely the driven snow, Jeff Sessions, because he has recused himself from life, it appears.
Yeah, look, all of these people have been involved intimately in all the nature of what the swamp has been doing for the last couple of generations, if you will. And at this point, you've got a Department of Justice that is still trying to act as though everything is fine. And yet every day brings up the facts of the matter that people have been, I don't want to say colluding, but involved to some degree in the nature of what the president's been trying to fight, which is the corruption in this framework. They've been used to operating in a certain way. And
Who's
frankly,
they?
The senators, the DOJ bureaucracy, the corrupt tax.
Yeah.
And if they're complaining about the pardons the president's giving, they may want him to be generous with those pardons, depending on what comes up in the next few years. With what we find, they would want that. But I think that I think a lot of people didn't know exactly how deep the stink went in the government, or that Trump would even be inclined and be willing to find it. And this is, I think, what the problem is for many of them.
Byron, does it strike you as odd that, and look, they're not immensely gifted people, Ryan or McConnell, but certainly they're beginning to perceive the talents and the gifts of President Trump, even as they closely examine their own deficiencies, wouldn't you think? And yet they will not stand up with this president against this abjectly and obviously, patently corrupt special counsel.
Well, I think they began to get an idea of some of his gifts on November 8 of 2016.
You would have thought.
But you know, it does. No, the role of Congress is very big, especially right now in the House, because you've been talking about Representative Devin Nunes, chairman of the Intelligence Committee, trying to get information out of the Justice Department and the FBI. And basically the situation is, if it's just a chairman trying to do this, even if he issues a subpoena, the FBI and the Justice Department can just blow him off and just not do it. But if the Speaker of the House says, I'm behind this, the House of Representatives means this, honor this subpoena, then they're going to have to do something. And in the past, Ryan has...
I mean, wait a minute. You know, when you say Devin Nunes to me, guys, I see a guy, you know, that is charging, you know, up out of the trenches, heavy gunfire, artillery, machine guns, everything around him, and a battalion behind him still in the trenches, and Ryan leading the way in the trenches, just sort of saying, you know, good luck, rather than having anything to do with supporting him, giving him covering fire, doing a bloody thing to support him and Nunes and his efforts and that of his House Intel Committee to get to the truth.
Well, I think you should...
I mean, he is nothing but... frankly, I think he should be charged for dereliction.
Let's give Ryan a little bit of credit here. If you remember back to the memo...
I can assure you, I will give him a little bit of credit.
Remember the memo that Devin Nunes released, which was based on a lot of information. Some of that stuff they had gotten because Ryan actually stood up behind them and accused the Justice Department of, quote, stonewalling the House.
Oh, that's a naughty word, isn't it?
Well, it ended
one of
up...
those just tough words that I like to hear from Paul Ryan.
It meant that they got the information, and the memo meant something.
What did they get?
Well,
They've asked for
you know the part about them using
documents. They've gotten 7,000 documents since last fall. What have they gotten? They have not gotten the unredacted origination memo of the special counsel, even though twice the Justice Department said they would deliver it. That's what they've gotten.
That's what they want.
And where have the American people heard that powerful, strong, independent, courageous voice of Paul Ryan? They haven't heard a squeak out of the man.
The fact that we got the information that the Justice Department used the dossier to get a FISA warrant, something we've talked about a lot, that's something that they got. And they're going to get this origination memo, and they're going to get more about the informant here. But it's been very hard.
We also need, it seems to me, Tammy, to give in advance of whatever report the OIG is going to release, if indeed he ever does. Supposedly it's coming up next week.
You're right, the 11th, I think.
We had hoped this week, but then we had hoped previous ones as well. To think that he is the one who found the text between Strzok and Page, or we wouldn't know much about this to begin with, because Devin Nunes was pushing hard. Although, I mean, when it's either the OIG and reports from his office, or Devin Nunes and the Intelligence Committee that have had the guts to stand up.
And look, and finally, it'll be drip by drip. But like this report, you've got Lisa Page finally resigning. You've got people panicking a bit about what's going to finally prep the actual charges against McCabe, and then all of this. It will start. It'll be like Kilauea, starting a little bit slow with some vents coming up every now and then it just begins to move, and it won't be able to be stopped. That's what they're afraid of, and that's what I think this will become. Piece by piece, even with the obstruction, it's so awful it will have to happen.
Well, I hope you're right, Tammy. I truly do. And Byron, you're going to get the last word here. I'm sitting here watching this thing, and I am not at this point convinced that that anyone in Congress beyond the Intel Committee has the guts to stand up against this stonewalling. Department of Justice and FBI, and I know that no one in the U.S. Senate does.
I'll just say one other player in this, and that is the President of the United States. Now, maybe he doesn't just indiscriminately declassify a bunch of stuff, but if the House focuses on critical information in this investigation, the President of the United States can tell his Justice Department to comply with a House subpoena.
But it'd be a hell of a lot easier, wouldn't it, if he had somebody with courage and principle in either the Senate Majority Leader's role or that of the House Speaker, right?
It would indeed.
Byron, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Byron York. Tammy Bruce, thank you for being here, as always. Good to see you. Up next, President Trump weighs in on Samantha Bee's. Are you like me? Did you know who Samantha Bee was until her vulgar mouth spewed disgusting comments? And the television network that won't fire her. You know, I thought those big media sorts were all about doing what's right. Diamond and Silk, they're going to join us here tonight.
Wow.
Next, in fact, on the national left-wing media double standard, and oh yeah, Hollywood, you too. We're coming right back. Well, whatever you want to call her, Samantha Bee has now apologized for her reprehensible comment about first daughter Ivanka Trump. But the president is wondering why the left-wing show host has been given a free pass by the national left-wing media. This is what he tweeted this morning. Well, it's among the things he tweeted this morning. Asking, why aren't they firing no talent Samantha Bee for the horrible language used on her low-rating show? A total double standard, but that's okay. We are winning, and we'll be doing so for a long time to come. Well, joining us tonight, two winners for sure, social media stars, Diamond and Silk. Great to have you all with us.
Oh, thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. It's always great to see you, and I wish you'd be here every night. But to this Samantha Bee thing, apparently there's a vested interest here. It's somebody trying to exploit the Trump phenomenon on the left and not mention the president's name. I mean, what do you think?
Well, you know what? It's backfiring in her face. I think that she should be fired. If ABC was able to take Roseanne's show away from her because of a tweet that she apologized for, then whoever this here, TBS, they should also drop.
Time Warner. Yeah.
They should drop her as well. Because, you know, using these vile and derogatory names against the first family, that has got to stop. We see a clear double standard, the hypocrisy on the left. This is like hypocritical. If this would have been a conservative that said this, oh my God, all advertisers, not just two, but all advertisers would have pulled out. So I think that her show should be canned as well.
And this wasn't a mistake.
No,
this here,
they could have bleeped that out, couldn't they?
They could have bleeped it out. It was already pre-planned and pre-edited, so they could have edited it out.
Why were the ratings down? Something like 50%.
Well, see, if your ratings is down, then get rid of the show if your ratings are down. But don't take and call the first family or Ivanka Trump a derogatory name to get attention. No.
And they do it over and over because they're doing two things. They're trying to exploit the Trump era. They know he has an absolute magic power to drive ratings, whether it's a left-wing network or a right-wing network, whether it's Hollywood or whether it's sports. This is a man who is I mean, I don't know. Do you know, it'd be interesting to hear a bunch of economists get together and try to figure out how much he's added to the economy just in media power and ratings and audience for websites, I mean, across the board.
Yeah. Across the board.
That's why a lot of the media is still in business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that would explain something I've been trying to figure, because some of those networks, I can't figure out why they would. Yes. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Roseanne. She got a raw deal, it seems to me. She said something utterly repugnant and racist, but man, they shot her before she could even take stock and inventory of her failings, don't you think?
Well, you know what? It was a joke that went bad. She deleted the tweet. She apologized for it. And that should have been the end of it, okay? But when you have the left wing that's pushing the narrative, oh, she's racist, but do you know She used the word monkey. Do you know black people call us monkeys, coons, akatoms? They use the N-word. So you know what? Racism, when we talk about racism, this is a teachable moment. They shouldn't have canned her show. They should have allowed the show to be a teachable moment.
Yes.
Racism is not one-sided. We got to look at both sides when we talk about racism. Racism is not about just when a white person says something to a black person or about a black person. It could be black people throwing shade or racist words at other black people.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? So we need to have the full conversation about that.
Yeah, and we've been having this conversation for a long time. And frankly, it still surprises me when someone like Roseanne comes up with nonsense. I mean, she said she was driven by Ambien. Sanofi, the drug company, has gotten a lot of heat for it. But as they pointed out, and I'm going to give them credit, and a lot of people are going to hate me for this, but I thought when they said that whatever the side effects, and there are many to Ambien, racism is not one of the established side effects.
But you know what? I wish that we would stop dividing ourselves based on our skin color and start uniting ourselves based on the fact that we are Americans.
You know, the president is doing a great job of that.
An amazing job, because this is the United States, not the divided states, and there's only one race, and that's the human race.
And he's bringing us all together. Look at the economy. Look at how things are flowing. He's a man that doesn't waver. He doesn't back down, and we love it.
That's right.
We love this, and you know what? I think even the left secretly in their there's shriveled up little hearts. I have to say he's doing a hell of a job.
Yes.
We were going to do a list of the accomplishments tonight.
Okay.
And frankly, we didn't have time to list the accomplishments of this president as he leads up to the midterm elections.
Wow.
I mean, this would be one of those Star Wars scrolls that would keep going and going.
Yes, our president have done more. President Trump have done more in the year and a half that he's been in office than Obama did in 8 years.
That's right.
Well,
so this is amazing.
Actually, we got to give him credit for both the Obama years and for his 16 months in office, because he's not only made all of these historic and, as you say, unprecedented achievements, the best since FDR, but he's also unwound 8 years of Obama.
That's
and all
right.
that division and nasty
Absolutely.
And all of that
He's
stuff.
got it going the other way.
That's
Diamond
right.
and Silk, you've always got it going the right way, and we are delighted to see you. Thank you for being
Thank you for having us.
so much. Oh, Chit Chat Tour.
That's right. We're going to be in California in July. Get your tickets at diamondandsilk.com. We believe we can flip California red.
That's right.
If any two people can, these are the folks right here. Mission, right?
Yes.
Go get them. That'll be a mission accomplished for sure. Up next, the Trump economy is roaring. We're going to take a closer look at the record-setting jobs numbers next. Did I say thank you, Diamond and Silk? And don't forget to go to diamondandsilk.com. Thanks. We'll be right back. The Trump economy continues to, well, just to roar. Thanks to the president's American First agenda. Fox Business's Deirdre Bolton with our full report.
Lou, this is a standout report, and the U.S. economy hit a record. May's data marked the 92nd straight month of job growth, a record streak. The unemployment rate fell to an 18-year low of 3.8% in May. The economy added 223,000 new jobs. American employers hired the most workers in healthcare by a clear margin, followed by retail and professional services. Construction and leisure and hospitality rounded out the top 5 categories. The unemployment rate for African Americans fell to a new low, 5.9%, the lowest on record since 1972. Hispanic workers, a slight rise in May to 4.9% from April's 4.8%, but historically low. The data points indicate an easier start for recent college graduates, too. Job openings are at a 2-decade high. Anecdotally, some company leaders say it's difficult to fill highly skilled worker positions. Some even complain that once they find talent, they have to pay more to keep valuable employees on board. Those comments fit with what we saw with wage growth data. Month-on-month, year-on-year figures, wage growth was 0.1% higher than forecast. The report is solid enough to indicate that when the Federal Reserve meets on June 12th and 13th, they will raise interest rates as forecast. Economists say the American economy is strong enough to take the hike. Lou, back to you.
We'll see. Thanks, Deirdre Bolton. Appreciate it. And those people hiring people having to pay more money, the poor darlings. Who would have thought they would have to raise wages? the burdens of being on Wall Street and being the Koch brothers and the Business Roundtable and the Chamber. Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you, President Trump. On Wall Street, stocks closing higher following the record-setting jobs report. The Dow gaining 219 points, the S&P up 29. The Nasdaq up 112. Volume on the big board, 3.6 billion shares, and the Dow losing 0.5% on the week. The S&P gained 0.5%. The Nasdaq up nearly 2%. More than 100 Boeing machinists have voted to unionize in South Carolina, the state with the lowest rate of organized labor in the country. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, President Trump flourishing in his role as comforter-in-chief. We take up the president's empathetic, softer side. Pastor Robert Jeffress joins us here next, and we'll also examine some of the tough hits that he's handing out as well. Robert Jeffress is my guest here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. President Trump has already proven himself to be a historic leader, a tough negotiator during his short time in the White House. But he's also shown tremendous heart, providing comfort, being empathetic to those in pain or in need of help.
Her family, when people met the family, they saw what an incredible person she was. I weren't going to bring you up, but I looked at you in the audience and I said, you have to come up because you're representing something so important. You understand that? I want to thank everybody. I know you've been through a lot. Most of you have been through a lot, more than you ever thought possible, more than you ever thought humanly possible. And all I can say is that we're fighting hard for you and we will not stop.
A wonderful moment, and it's a side that we've seen with this president, but the left-wing media, Pastor, hasn't been sharing a lot of those moments.
No, because it doesn't fit the caricature they're trying to portray the president as. Look, the president is one of the toughest people I've ever met, but he's one of the nicest and kindest people I've ever met as well. And we've seen his warm side on display even this week, you know, hugging that little boy from Indiana at the signing ceremony, or the way he dealt yesterday with those families who were victims of the Santa Fe shootings. I talked to people who were in the room with him yesterday. They said you cannot believe how compassionate he was. And by the way, Lou, we saw that side of him even in his dealings with Kim Jong-un. Last night, he told a group of us about that horrible letter he received from Moon threatening to see us on the nuclear battlefield. But instead of responding in anger, President Trump dictated a letter that was gracious. It had just the right mix of toughness and graciousness, and it brought Kim Jong-un back to the negotiating table. And that's what we've got in this leader. We've got the perfect blend of toughness and tenderness.
And we've also got a president who has had to contend with more vitriol, more vulgarity and viciousness than any executive in the history of this country. And he's done so, first and foremost, with strength and resolve, and often giving far better than he got. But this is a president who is dealing with such sanctimonious, self-righteous hypocrisy and a different standard altogether than any other president has ever had to endure in national media.
Well, that's right. Let's just say it like it is. No president has had as much crap thrown at them every day as President Trump has. But the fact is, he keeps going on. You know, last night we were at this gathering. I got a chance to speak, and then he came on to speak here in Dallas. By the way, Lou, he told me specifically to send his greetings to the great Lou Dobbs. He loves you, and he loves this program. But, Lou, last night, I have never seen a president enthusiastically received as he was last night because of all the positive things that are going on. He talked about everything you've talked about the economy, North Korea, Iran, conservative judges being appointed, and it's never been going this well. And I said, though, in my remarks before he began speaking last night, 60% of Americans believe this country is going in the right direction. That's